Hey all, thanks for coming. I just wanted to introduce this fabulous panel. I'm very pleased as the North American manager of Archive to welcome this fabulous group of talented creatives. I will let you introduce the panel itself and the title and all of that, but I just wanted to say thanks for coming. We're glad to be here.
Thank you. Hi, welcome everybody. Thank you. Woo. Maybe I'll hold that back. I'm delighted to see you all, and we're really excited to be here today. I did want to make a couple of thank yous. I wanted to thank LeBook for having us and hosting this conversation. I wanted to thank Patty Schumann and Archive Magazine for inviting us to have this discussion and supporting it. I wanted to thank Christina Archer for coming in from LA and Kenny Friedman for coming in from Highland Park, but for boldly participating in this conversation. And I also wanted to give a shout out to Drew Beeson. Thank you for shooting this for us. We're really grateful. You know, this space is inspiring so many feelings. I'm sure people who have been participating at all in AI, and even if you're not participating, you're seeing that there are a lot of strong emotions around this. Everybody's having them. And we talked amongst ourselves, and we were saying that we wanted to create a space where people could feel comfortable wherever you are on on this space in terms of your feelings. We have a lot of empathy for it. I think we've probably felt the gamut. I know I have. But I want to invite you to participate a little bit. So, here's my little clicker. So we want to ask, how are you feeling about generative AI? So if you go on your phone and you enter menti.com, and then there's a code at the top, and it is 6327-8270. And we invite you to tell us how you're feeling. And so by way of our feelings, I thought we could all introduce ourselves and sort of describe how we first felt about generative AI and how it brought us into engaging with it. So, sure.
Hello, testing the mic. While you guys are doing that, thank you guys for being here. Thank you, Liz. I'm a photographer and director that has a very stylized, colorful body of work, and I first encountered AI actually from my friend Ellie Pritz, who's an artist, amazing glitch generative artist, early in 2021, and she was, to me, it was almost like explaining the internet to your grandmother. When she was explaining that she was, creating or generating things based on a tokenized system where you would pay to generate and you would speak to this AI, it just seemed like complete nonsense to me. And that was a while ago, and that's how I first encountered it. And then I was playing with it for, probably maybe about a couple of months, and I got really frustrated at first, and so I actually didn't think it was for me, and I took a really long break from exploring it, and then kind of full circle came back to it. But back to just briefly on the type of work that I do, I think that I do a lot of world building and kind of creating set builds, and I felt like this tool, including even virtual production and using Unreal Engine and AI, that this could really amplify my world building in ways that I could never do before in the physical world. So to me, I just need to kind of crack the code for myself and really get through the growing pains of learning how to use it for your best ability in your talent and in your work. So, yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you both for being on this as well. My background way long ago was photographer. I think that's important to the story, even though I haven't really touched a camera in a while. Became an art director, now I'm executive creative director, but I've been playing in the AI space for probably since January 2022, if not a little bit before. And it was similar to you. I heard about it, I saw about it, people were posting on LinkedIn, and I was like, this is cool. What can it do? And I mean, this is really early on it, and I was using Wombo and Starry Eye, which were apps for iPhone. And I was able to make really weird stuff, things that like accidents really, and I've always been a fan of mistakes and accidents, and I was able to get into that world and lean into it. And I even say like what I do now is steering into the swerve of accidents. And to me, it wasn't. It was just a creative tool where you can do kind of things that you couldn't do in the real world, right? And I fell in love with it instantly. I was bummed I couldn't get on Midjourney. I kept trying to get on it, and then finally hit it. I think around version 2, and totally transformed the way I thought about like creation. I was working at an agency there, and somewhere around version 4, if you're on Midjourney, that like every couple months they release a new version. They're on 6 now. So somewhere around 4, it hit me. I was like, this is going to change everything that we do in the agency world, because you could get to like a yes quicker. You can ideate quicker. You can ideate totally differently than we have before. Mood board differently than we have before, and create things that we weren't thinking of. And so I got really into it, and I taught my agency how to use it, and then later taught it for about a year. And then I landed in the role that I'm in now, but still teach people how to use AI in their world, creative directors, artists, photographers, and all that.
Cool. And I come from the agency world myself. I was an agency art producer for 23 years. And I mean, I come from the days of having a loop and a light box. And I started to get really excited about AI when I saw about AlphaGo beating Lee Sedol, the world champion Go player, and started to get a sense of the vast data that we were going to be able to talk to. And when the generative scene came on, to say I was electrified and voracious is an understatement. I left my job at the end of 2022 and dove in, feet, head, arms, everything first, into the world of AI, and have been a part of communities and community building in this space, really outside of the advertising world. So communities of product managers and programmers and college professors and educators and healthcare people, so very diverse group of AI, fellow AI enthusiasts, and have dived into learning about workflows, making video start to finish workflows, and seeing how that works, which is an interesting space. So that's me, and that's us. So Zach Lieberman from MIT in their Media Arts and Sciences department, he creates algorithmic tools for artists, and he's a really interesting artist himself. I watched a talk he gave where he talked about the notion of demos versus poems. So demos are using technology to show off the technology, to learn about the technology, to experiment with it. And they're really a necessary part of experimenting out loud, which is, I think, an important part of the whole thing. Poems, they're a use of technology, but they're in service of an idea. So another way of saying this is that a demo is trying out the technology and seeing how it works. And a poem is a finished piece. It's filled with intent And once again, it's in service of an idea. So, as a couple of poets, in my opinion, can you talk a little bit about your own creative process in moving from demo to poem?
Sure. It's kind of interesting because even just thinking about my new relationship with language as a photographer director, I mean, besides like writing scripts or something like that, but now I'm engaging in language with the AI in a way that's massaging that communication to get the results that I want. And so I haven't really, I just think it's ironic that you called us poets because it is like a poetry of language in the prompt, really, which is really fascinating. But in terms of process and just kind of moving from demo to poem, it makes me think of Ira Glass talks about the gap, which is where your tastes are, basically. Everyone kind of gets into whatever creative practice because you're very excited about, something that inspired you. Except there's that gap between you actually making work that you like, and so there's this huge gap where you're disappointed in your output for a long time. And he talks about how most people don't bear that uncomfortability until you get to a place where it's like palatable for you to really engage with work that you're excited about that you're making. And I think that's what my relationship was with it, is that I first felt like I wasn't able to, it was too vanilla. I was still making things that looked AI, and I was frustrated by this sort of like AI aesthetic, and I didn't want to all of a sudden, basically just this brand and this style that I built, I'm not just going to abandon my brand, my story, my voice. And so it really, for me, has been this sort of back and forth between finding a way to massage things into my voice and feel very authentic to my artist's style, and so it took a time. It absolutely took time, and again, like I mentioned, I sort of took a break because I was frustrated, and then at one point, though, I had a few different experimental film ideas, and one of them, I was talking to my friend Paul Trillo, who is an AI filmmaker, and I was just kind of running some things by him, like, oh, I didn't get this shot, and I wish, I need a credit roll, and I need a transitional scene. And of course he's going to suggest, like, well, why aren't you using AI to be able to fill in these gaps of the storytelling that you kind of weren't able to achieve? And I felt like, okay, I'm going to give it another chance. And then because I had such a specific idea in mind of what I wanted to get, that I literally just didn't walk away from the computer from one runway for like 4 days. I was like, I know what I want and I'm gonna get this. And it was so many. It went from like Mid-Journey to Runway and then reworking it. And then at that time still Dali was like sort of, a thing. But it took so many like back alley ways to finally get what I wanted. And then I realized I just needed to stay the course, and that really opened up so many possibilities for the type of work that I do. So
that's really interesting, though. What I hear you saying is that you have to sit with the discomfort of not being good and learn a new way to talk to the machines. The machines, it's multiple.
That's something I struggle with, is I've never heard of it, the demo versus poetry. I mean, you mentioned it a couple days ago, but that's something I have a hard time with. I think because I fell into the poetry really easily, I found something totally by mistake that wound up looking incredibly grotesque but absolutely beautiful at the same time, and that spoke to me, and I leaned into that. But at the same time, I was playing in that demo world because it was really early, and I would share my experiments, and people were like, oh, wow, this is cool, which organically led me into being a teacher of AI. But as the problem is, like, I'm also a creative director, an art director, a designer, and I care about quality. So it's hard to show sometimes my demos and my mistakes, and I think we were talking yesterday, I apologize when I'm going to share something that is not up to my standards. I just did a video thing. I was part of this competition that I wound up winning, and it was video, and the lip sync's not perfect, and I can probably tell you exactly like the 10 terrible times in this 1 minute thing where it's not to what I want, but for the technology, it's amazing, you know, and I think that's important, but I do live in the poetry world a lot more, and like I said, what I found is I didn't force it. I saw what I could do with it and what it gave me, and I just steered into that, and that's where I found, like, we'll show these later, but I have a bunch of different accounts. One is these little creatures called Creatures of FPO, but there's these little like knit creatures, and I didn't start thinking I'm gonna create this. They just happened, and it became a life of its own, and like that's what I love about it, because it gave me something I never would have thought about. And that's where I live in the poetry world. It's like I'm working with it, and then I'm like finding out what I love about it, and then focusing on and making it perfect. But I'll see this one thing, I was like, oh my God, that's so cool, and then just focusing on and getting it exactly where I want to be.
But do you think there's a value to that sort of awkward and messy experimentation out loud? Do you think there's a value in the community?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. And honestly, the speech or whatever you call it, the session before with Chuck Anderson, I think it was Luis, said, you know, one of the most beautiful things are like when you get 3 arms or whatever, like, and there are ones that don't look good, but there's mistakes, and it actually made me think, because I have 47,000 Instagram accounts, and on one of those, I'm gonna start sharing like those mistakes again and my really early stuff, because I do love it, and I do have this side of me that wants to teach, and so you need those mistakes, but then I have my other like things that I want, like this needs to be beautiful. So it's like the little, you know, angel devil on my shoulders.
Sure.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think that, you know, we were talking about failing faster. The AI gives you an opportunity to see if a concept will work, see if, you know, just kind of kick the tires on something. And it does take, you know, time, money, effort, crew, in terms of like the type of work I do. And so there's a lot less risk you can take in the current kind of world that we live in terms of creativity potentially. And so AI, I think, is like such a great solution to kind of let us explore freely, and it's okay that it's bad, or like it's okay to fail, and like the sooner just the more that you fail, the more that you know it's working, and it's just the creative process. So.
And I'd add to that, so we just did, we're doing a TV spot, and to get to that, we had to do animatics and had to do them quickly, so 99% of the images in there are AI, and I felt really apologetic because it needed to be very specific for what we're shooting, and it doesn't look perfect. And the client's like, oh yeah, we get it, you know, so I think they understand the wonkiness, and they were okay with it, and they're like, yeah, cool, let's go, we get it, now let's shoot. So yeah, I love it.
Interesting. So clients are understanding that piece of it.
Yeah, they know that it's not going to be, I mean, it can be perfect.
Yes.
You can get there, but when you need an animatic in like
Eventually,
2 days,
right.
and you know, it's very specific, like there's no time for modeling, but they understood, like, yeah, we get the idea, that's what it's supposed to be.
So looking at this word cloud, I
Yeah.
see curious and excited as some of the biggest, skeptical, overwhelmed, nervous. This is really great. Copyright questions, yes. Okay.
Can I ask a question to the, so who is using it often, I would say? I know I'm going, oh, is that one of your questions?
Yeah, it is.
Never mind.
No, that's okay. That's all right. Yeah, that's fine.
We can cut that out of the video.
That's perfectly fine. See?
There you go.
Okay, so our next question, how often do you use generative AI tools? Daily, weekly, rarely, never.
Hourly.
Hourly falls under daily. So while you guys are doing that, in the time of learning for myself, I've learned to make custom GPTs, which are custom AI assistants, how to use large language models for a range of tasks, and like I mentioned before, start to finish video workflows. So I went from a very stay in my lane sort of culture to cruising in multiple lanes. So I wanted to ask you if you could comment on how generative AI has expanded your work or your possibilities?
I mean, I think I briefly touched on it earlier, but I have been really fascinated by merging the practical kind of set worlds that I build with kind of creating these hybrid worlds with virtual production and with AI, and that has opened up so many new possibilities. There's also things that are burgeoning that is AI for virtual production. And just to clarify, virtual production is like using an LED volume, and you can have Unreal Engine be kind of guiding the tracking with the camera. So like in real time, in theory, with Kubrick, like shout out to Kubrick, but you could be on set and say, you know what, I want to change this background to be, you know, the Arctic Circle. And then you go in, you generate for the wall, and then here you are, 10 minutes later, tweaking it, shooting in a different world. So for me, it's like magical, and yet to have, the funds to do a case study to show everybody the possibilities, but it's there. So I think that, and also just the fact that like my 360 workflow has completely transformed because one, I'm terrible at drawing. So like I can do my own storyboards. It does, it's sometimes time consuming to get the outputs, but I can do storyboards. I can, actually create treatments with completely original content. I don't need to be pulling swipe from other like things that exist in the world. And my set building, concepting, like sort of building worlds, I can just, it's so refreshing to not have to kind of be based in reality anymore. So I think I was kind of arguing that, I know obviously the copyright is such a huge conversation, but that you could almost argue that the billions of inputs make it more creative and than us relying on what's existing, because people are, you go on set and they say, well, we want this, but like slightly different. So here it's like safer because it's generated. I mean, I'm sure that what I'm saying is probably controversial, so I don't know. Safer, I don't know about safer, but
no, anyway. But that makes sense because you do pull swipe, and we're like, okay, this is a different photographer's thing, but we want you to shoot it, and then how much better is that?
Yeah. That's right.
For me, what was that exact question?
Yeah, how has it expanded your work or your possibilities?
I mean, it's limitless possibilities. Like the whole get to yes quicker is a huge thing. Like my team uses it for mood boards all the time. We're using it for spec, but we've used it like literally every part of the process. I had a art director have this idea, and she just put like a couple things on a mood board, and I was like, okay, you could do that in AI, and I taught her how to do it, and we had this beautiful idea that the client loved, but they didn't pick, but it was so close to getting out in the real world, like as AI, and it was something that the only alternative was really heavy CGI, and I don't know who would do it, but it was just absolutely different and weird and beautiful. Personally, I've used it, like I started playing with After Effects and Premiere Pro, and like I haven't touched After Effects really since probably 2003. So I'm learning those tools again. Also, I mentioned I was a photographer. Like my AI is very photographic, and it's stuff like my other account are these big giant knit creatures with people, and to do it practically would cost me tens of thousands of dollars to do, which I want to do, but I'm starting to shoot again because I want to put real people in there. So it's kind of that full circle for me. And then like if you ask me this in a year, hopefully I'll say I got into sculpting and I'm actually sculpting my things.
Yeah.
So to me, it's opening, and it can open like every kind of technology or bit of art that there is, except for painting, because I'm not a good painter.
Yeah, but that's really interesting to hear that it's bringing you back into more traditional creative practices, and it's giving you the flexibility to be more creative on set in the moment, which is a more intuitive sort of way of working. If I'm hearing that right. So, okay, this is interesting. This is an interesting snapshot. So if you're not experimenting with AI, what's stopping you? I'm curious to hear. And while you're doing that, so we've talked about how AI expands our possibilities, but as someone deeply rooted in traditional creative practices, how do you maintain your creative identity when using AI? How do you balance the you in your work with the influence of the technology?
That's a great question. I think that we live in a world where everything has become so homogenized, especially our feeds. And so I think what comes to mind first is like curation. I feel like as creatives and artists, we've always been curators of our own work and kind of culling through and finding the thing that resonates, and you're not quite sure what it is about that, but it just clicks. But also I think in kind of the current like content-heavy world that we live in, it's so crucial to be able to kind of discern what feels right for you. And like we talked about, I don't think that AI should be a tool that like not everyone needs to use it if it doesn't make sense for the type of work you do or the workflows that you implement. Because if you're a lifestyle photographer, everything is about authenticity. So I can't really imagine, how that crossover happens. But for me, I have been focusing on basically shooting things that are, half mine or fully mine, and then the second half, I guess, is generated, which is still mine, but also copyright is another question. But so I feel really good about that. Like, I know this is going to be rooted in my voice, because I want to have physical people. I want to be able to capture humanity in like a real moment, but then bring them into any world that I, see could be really exciting. So, does that answer your question? Yeah.
Yeah, that was interesting. I thought that was a thoughtful answer.
Okay.
How about you?
For me, I have the two sides, like, creative director, which I won't get into much because a lot of times it's not me. I mean, it is, but it's client, right? And I do have to bring my voice to it, and it has to look like, what I would say, but at the end of the day, client's pain. That said, I am an absolute believer in creativity, and that we need to be like humanly creative and do awesome stuff and weird stuff and different stuff. So my team like uses it for that. But as like in the art world, it is uniquely me. Like my wife will send me the things where there's like 150,000 followers of an account, and I look at it and I'm like, it's pretty. It's kind of like, again, I love Chuck. If you guys missed his thing, it was so good. I guess that's Chuck Anderson, No Pattern. Like, I think they'll have a video of it, but he said like it's not enough to just put something out there that's pretty, and I believe that. That said, like the algorithms love just pretty. Like that's what works.
Right.
And it kills me because I see these things and I'm like, oh my god, this person went from like 0 followers to 45 million, but I stay true to like my look. So the little creatures of FPO thing, they're, like I said, they're these little knit creatures. And I put them out there when they weren't good, by the way. They started like really just rough and not good. And people were like, oh my God, this is so you. But if you ask, like I would have never thought about it and never would have thought it would be me. And they're like, no, it's 100% you. And so organically it happened. And then with my other like work that's themed, what I did is Midjourney has this thing called Describe, where you can upload an image and it'll describe what it sees. And I think there's problems with it because a lot of times it'll be like in the style of Wes Anderson or other artists, and I think that's bad, and I think they shouldn't put artist names in there. But what it'll do is like, it'll tell you what it is, and in the end it'll have these descriptors, the aesthetic descriptors. So what I would do is I'd feed my old photos in, and I would look for the aesthetic descriptors that were consistent, and I played with those and turned those on and turned those up, like by putting them in and putting them out. And I found, like, if you look at what I'm doing in AI on my main account, it looks like what I was shooting, and it's intentional. So, because I wish I could get out and shoot all the time, but I just don't have the time, and so this is my way to like bring that back. And it really, if I was still shooting for a living, I think what I'm showing is the same style. So.
But that's an interesting conversation you're having with the machine in asking it, what does it see in your actual analog photography?
Yeah.
So that then you can try to find the style.
Yeah, once that Describe feature came around, my work completely changed, because I was doing the things that like they were really cool to me and they looked really beautiful and cool, but and there was always something in there because I have a problem with just putting beauty out there, which maybe I shouldn't, but it looked more real and looked more me, so it's hard for me to go back.
Do the surprises ever make you feel like, did I make this or am I cheating?
No, I look at it like, so I was into street photography as well. That wasn't what I made my living, but I love it. And I don't think it's any different. Like, I know when I sit down and I'm gonna make something, I know where I wanna be, and I'll put that into the prompt. And if you're doing street photography, a lot of times you just stay in one place. I mean, sometimes you walk around, but sometimes you'll be like, this is absolutely beautiful. I'm gonna stay there till like the right person walks across. I'm gonna hit the button, and it's all chance. It might never happen, and you might get a million shots, right? But you just were like, this is beautiful, or this is the area that I want to capture, Randolph Market, or whatever. And that's what I'm doing, is I'm there, I know where I want to be, I find that place, and then I blow it out and I make thousands of images and then like post 4. So like, yeah, it fills my hard drive, but people don't see it because like, I'm just going snap, 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 and then I'm like, I'm only keeping the ones that I genuinely like.
Yeah, of course.
I think it's interesting because, when you think about cheating, I kind of think about, I don't know if this is the TI calculator, like Texas Instruments. Like, I kind of see it as that because, it wasn't cheating if everyone has the tool. Then we're all just leveling up to like a higher level of consciousness, whatever that might be, for us not having to do these menial tasks. But I do think that I was reading, like it said, where did it say? Not limited bandwidth, pay-to-play AI tools. I do think that, I can't really say that because, there still is a cost. So there still is like the socioeconomic layer that it is pay-to-play. So, people from different countries or from anywhere that isn't from an underprivileged community that doesn't have the ability to pay to use these programs, obviously it isn't a level playing field. But in a way, I'm kind of saying that it's not cheating because we all can access it. So maybe that's my theory.
You could get a lot of Gmail accounts.
So I want to bring the word collaboration into the conversation as it relates to AI tools. There's a founder in the AI space who describes working with the tools like having very hungover interns. You have to be very specific with them. You have to be very intentional. You have to be very descriptive when you're prompting. So can you comment on what the process has been in working with the tools to get useful, satisfying, or artful results?
Actually, you go first. I lost my thought.
It's all right.
Yeah, you can put a photo of a person, right? And you're gonna get it's not gonna be beautiful. It's I can get into the morality. So if you put photo of a person, it's gonna be photo of a young, 25-year-old woman with brown hair, and I don't want to do that. So I get really specific of what I want. Age and ethnicity and all that stuff, but you have to cheat it. Like we were talking yesterday, sometimes you have to say like 35 if you want 45, you have to say like 100 if you want like 75. But you learn how it thinks, and I play so much. I have like over 120,000 images I made on my current Midjourney account, and that wasn't my teaching account. So like, like even if I'm not going to create that night, I create most nights, but if I'm not going to do something, I just play and see what it could give me, and that's my collaboration. It's just like what can we do different, and what can we do cool, and what is it going to give me?
Yeah, and I also think about how, in a way, like the Midjourney Discord prompt kind of like free-flowing, it's almost like open source, where everyone's like sharing how they got there. So they're sharing examples of like, this is my prompt, this is what I got, which is really cool because it's a great learning experience. But I think for me, just in general, experimenting with different types of tools to see which one more resonates with what you're going for, because not a lot of people are, I don't think, talking about like Photoshop's generative AI just internally. I mean, everyone's using Midjourney, and I use both, but I love Photoshop Generative just because it inherently knows that I'm looking for a photographic style, so I don't have to force Midjourney out of what it wants to do and tell it photorealistic, blah, 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 high octane render, whatever, AK, blah, blah, blah. And so I can already kind of start, I can just get there quicker, and it's like so much nicer. I mean, the resolution, there's a ton of other problems with that. Yeah, it's kind of like a joke, a placeholder, but like it could go places. And so, but I really do think it's been an incredible amount of like trial and error, but knowing what you want and literally, and also being open to when things pivot, because I had this idea where I wanted to like generate an interior of a museum that was all wood paneled, and I wanted to populate it with like busts that were like my own portraits that I converted into bust sculptures. I was like, oh, this will take me like, this will take me months or something. Like, and then as I started the process, first of all, bust obviously could mean breast, and so that was even fascinating because the language pushback and the errors that I was getting with Adobe Photoshop Generative was actually, I was welcoming it because I was glad that they had the safety awareness to not be generating something inappropriate, but it was also kind of frustrating, and so it kind of pushed me further to like see how far I could push it to convert my portraits into like half like statues, and I kept saying bust, statue, and then like eventually I got to where I wanted. But then that whole idea flipped because they started to look like chess pieces, and so I went back to the drawing board, generated these like life-size, like very surreal chessboards, and then like populated that. So it was just, you know, it was obviously a play. It was like a ton of playing. I mean, it wasn't for a client, so that's where you can kind of just like pivot and be like, this actually works for this. I had no idea.
There's so much value in that iteration, and that's cool work, by the way. And it is very different when you're working with a model that generates images and you're using words to describe it, and now that we can bring the images in as well. And it's very helpful when you can use photographic languages, you know, like in terms of just lensing and lighting and composition. That's very useful. It's a useful language to have. And with the large language models, of course, you know, bringing in a persona, bringing in, there are all kinds of things that people can do to get very specific with the prompting. And then, of course, using the large language models to prompt other large language models. So I'll typically have a ChatGPT, a Claude, and a Perplexity, and I'm using them to work with the other ones. And it feels like a little team of hungover interns. So thank you so much for this. This is very interesting and understandable. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the ethical space. Recently I was asked to create a self-portrait using entirely generative tools. And I was doing it in Midjourney. I was using an image of myself is a character reference, or if you use the tools, a CREF, and it was very demoralizing. I went down a rabbit hole of ageist and sexist bias that's baked into the machines, and the more I work with them, the more I come up against that. So there are all kinds, I mean, pick your poison: algorithmic bias, deep fakes, training data, copyright issues. The environmental impacts are significant. The threat of a creative monoculture is a personal fear. The synthetic data we were discussing last night, which is where models are trained on the outputs of models. And there was an article in the journal Nature where they discussed that this can lead to model collapse, where the models don't know what's real anymore. And other. So I'm curious where your concerns rank in the AI space. I think that as a citizen of the Earth and our reckoning with the force that is AI, we have to be considerate of these. And I'm curious, what are the things that you guys are thinking about?
Well, it's no surprise that we're in a room where people are very concerned about copyright. Obviously,
Yeah.
a ton of artists and people working with clients. We want to approve things and we want to be able to use them. I mean, I may not be helpful in this scenario, but I just think that it will, I don't want to say it will work itself out, but it'll be the billions of inputs that are going into something, already make it inherently, the copyright infringement won't be, the issue, but it will be how can you actually, copyright this one thing. But I almost feel like it's similar to like furniture, right? You can't copyright furniture because a chair is a chair. Like there's a different style of chair. Maybe there's another level that will be able to move forward so that brands can still use, and I mean, not having to own every single copyright of every single, doing a buyout of everything. Like maybe there is another world, just because this is a new language that we're all kind of using and we're all working with. But I do think that, I mean, personally, I think as an artist, I will just be hindered by thinking about the copyright infringement. So I just kind of focus on like creating and learning and growing, and then, but I think what I'm mostly concerned about is that like the geopolitical implications of like, being able to shift entire, I mean, obviously elections, worldviews, those things I think are on a whole nother level that also there will just be a few billionaires that are guiding and training and really know the inner workings of these like few companies, and that we are going to be so reliant on them, and that just like really freaks me out.
Yeah.
So it's more so that, but.
How about you, Kenny?
That.
Yeah.
I'll go down the list because I can talk an hour at least about each of these copyright infringement. Like with you on that. Deepfakes scare the hell out of me. I have a kid who's 14. In seconds, you can ruin people's lives. We're there. I'm surprised it hasn't happened in his school yet, but we can do it to anybody in here. I think that's terrible. I do like though that like if I upload an AI image onto Instagram and stuff, most of the time it knows it's AI. I personally think like every AI generator platform, app, whatever, should put a digital watermark in there. They're like invisible. They can't be getting destroyed even with copy paste or screenshotting. They're still in there. I think we need that so a browser, an app or whatever can instantly, even your phone like will instantly know it's AI. It will still destroy people's lives if we know it's AI, but it'll hopefully do it less. Monoculture, I could talk about this forever. Like follow me on LinkedIn. I think we're there. I think we've been there for years. I think the algorithm created a monoculture. I love creativity. I think we're not the people in this room, but as a society, I think we're like probably one of the lowest points for appreciating true creativity. And literally, I can talk about that forever and filibuster. Environmental impacts, I like trees and animals, and I do worry about it, but not as much. The bias is huge too. I don't know if it's the algorithmic bias, but like I said, if you put a photo of a person, you're going to get a young woman most of the time. There's a beauty problem. There's racial and ethnic problems. An old professor of mine talks about the ableist space too, and that there's a problem with that as well. So, yeah, it's kind of gross too when you want to like bring people in who are not typically abled, I guess. Because of the way you have to prompt, I wish it would just come up, at the percentage of like society.
Okay.
Yeah, that's other. I don't know.
We can.
Yeah.
These are legitimate concerns, and these are things worth talking about. Let's flip it. Looking toward the future of creativity in the world of generative AI, can you share your thoughts on how creators will evolve and continue to push boundaries? And can you all share what you're most hopeful about in the AI space?
I really do think that the future of creativity and moving forward is this act of curation and this act of we're in this just heavy data, heavy content space that we're all a little hungover from it, and so we just this constant kind of curating my feed and curating your own work, and just, I think the future of creativity I'm hoping is, more quality over quantity, and that the quantity is something that just becomes like kind of automated if we have to, if like because that's not things that we should be spending our like brain power on. And my hope is that I can really like up level these ideas and be able to, I guess the biggest thing also that you said, which was being able to get to the idea so much quicker, and to be able to show something that represents where you want to go. And things take like months, years, like a feature film and all these things. And even just being able to expedite the creative process in a way that allows you to make better work faster, instead of just like more work that's crap. Like finding like the like going upside down with like the pyramid, so you can like produce better work that works, is what I'm most excited about, because it's time consuming. It takes budget, it takes money to be able to produce things and put them out in the world and hope that they're successful. So with this way, we can really expedite that process, and I think it's really exciting for creators.
And they're getting there faster too. I mean, like timelines are like every day they get shorter, right? So that's why I think it helps. But for me, where I see it going is, I think we have a lot of reps here, right? A year from now, 2 years from now, you'll probably have AI artists on your in your books. They might be photographers. It might be this because you're a photographer and director, right? So there's a photographer, director, and AI. People have illustrators. So like, I think it probably lives in the world of illustration as far as like when we think creation and cost. But I do think you'll be like, oh, I want to find an AI artist that has this style. I think I think you'll have general artists too, but a year from now, 2 years from now, like I think most art directors will be able to get that like general style. So I think that. I also think a lot of the things are going to be solved. Like I honestly can't wait for the current copyright cases to get out of the courts and put some kind of precedent down. I have a feeling that, like you said, like it's been modeled. It is. I think it's done, and I think you are creating new things unless you use an artist's name. Like I don't do that. I don't think people should do that. There shouldn't be a copyright issue. So I think once we hit that, it'll just make our stuff better and allow us to do better. If we stop, there's the whole algorithm problem, though, right? That's what's keeping us, I think, now from getting super creative.
Good, yeah. And I think that the future of collaboration is going to be very different, and people are going to be wearing a lot more hats and different hats, and it's going to be interesting. Thank you guys so much. We'd love to take some questions from the audience if anyone has any. We saved a little time. Yeah.
So my question to y'all is, y'all have discussed Adobe for generative as well as Midjourney. What are other tools, AI tools in particular, that you would recommend us fellow creatives start to play with?
Okay. Oh, you're so. I would say anything.
We're
right?
all like, yeah.
Starry AI. It's an app for iPhone. It's probably on Android now. You get like 5 free credits a day. Play with it. It's fun. Like if I don't use it as much anymore, but like if you need free, it's free. I love, for video, I love Luma versus Runway. The reason I like Luma is they came from the world of NeRFs, which are those I forget what it means, but it's that 3D modeling of worlds. So they understand depth really well, and I think if you look at Luma versus Runway, they're maybe a little behind on some of the like paintbrush and things you can do for movement, but their depth is so much better. So my main tools are Midjourney, Luma. I play with Runway. Pika is really good. I'll upload videos. So I had to do this project which included like lip sync. So I'd go Midjourney to Luma to Pika, to 11 Labs for voice, and I would like speak into it myself and then change the voice. and then I would upload, the video and the audio to Pika, and it would put the lip sync in there.
I had mentioned this earlier, but just because I'm kind of very fascinated with what virtual production can do for in-studio productions, and so that we're not like as reliant on green screen, and we can kind of capture things in camera. And so there is one software Kubrick plugin that basically creates worlds that have 2.5D parallax so that you can kind of mimic virtual production and be able to basically generate environments and then still be able to like connect and track your camera movement. So that to me is what's really exciting, just because everything so far is like two-dimensional and, faking, like everything's really a plate and then you fake the movement in it. And so, I mean, Gen 3 and then Dream Machine, though, now you can actually start using the language of camera movement, which has been really exciting. But up until that point, it was just a lot of kind of like faking movement. And there's a lot with those new tools that is exciting, but it's so broad. It's still like being refined.
Well, it changes every day, and that's what, like every day there's a new update or there's a new tool. So Luma just added the camera movements, and you can do a first and a last frame, so that's kind of fun.
Yeah, so mine is kind of more niche because I'm just interested in this space of virtual production and generating in real time.
And then there's also, sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry, you go. Okay, well, there's also Stable Diffusion, which I don't play with as much, but if it's you can use things like Crea and Leonardo to use it, but to actually like get the power of the modeling and things like that, which is Flux and all that kind of stuff, it's a lot more coding kind of workflow. So I tell people to start on something easier first and then move there.
Well, and also, I mean, in terms of sound, which is really interesting, 11 Labs is trained on a vast musicology data sets as well as Foley artists. So the implications for the sound effects it is a fun rabbit hole. And if you've ever played with Udio for music, you can get some really funky, cool, weird effects. You just have to kind of go there in the prompting. You have to get into a creative flow. And of course, when we talk about Midjourney, you take a Midjourney output and then you input it into these motion tools like the Luma Dream Machine or the Runway, and that's what you animate, and it's magical.
Thank you. So consumers are increasingly aware of AI, as they're scrolling through their feed, they can, increasingly spot what is or what might be. And of course, sometimes they are labeled, as you mentioned. That kind of starts to challenge their sense of authorship and even reality, deepfake being a great example of that. That awareness, sometimes an uncanny valley sort of feeling, is subject matter in and of itself. And I'm wondering how, for you guys, how AI as subject matter is impacting your creative process, not just as a tool to create whatever story you're going to tell, but as the subject matter itself.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I'm exactly answering your question, but I do think that I've found in this process that as artists, I think, or as creatives, as artists, like our role is to bring the human into the work that we're making. So we refine a skill set. We refine something that is so focused on the technicality of something, but that doesn't go far enough. Like just because you're making cool stuff and you're really good at a skill, it's this moment between that gap between being able to tell a human story and be able to. That's when I feel like you're onto something and you're actually making great work. And I think that's going to be the differentiation in the type of work that's out there when it's either tone deaf and like it's just you don't connect with it. And that's in my process. I've been feeling that and figuring that out. And it really is like I guess like a heart-centered feeling to just like feel if you feel connected to it or if it's just surreal and in another world and you don't connect with it. So But I do think one other thought I had was just that for so long we were talking about this like post-truth society, and that came to be around the pandemic or even before that. But now I feel like we're fully like post-truth. Like it almost amplified. And I was just recently thinking about that was before AI tools, and now we're literally living in a world where we can literally have your AI voice trained. You don't know if it's the real person. The deep fake. So yeah, we're all definitely scared. but that was just a comment to the AI label and feeling conflicted about that. But so anyway, I hope that answers your question.
That post-truth thing is really, I could talk about that too. But we've been there, with filters and with again, algorithm, with influencers, that's kind of the post-truth. But to answer your thing differently, and because I had a different take on it, I don't know if this is what you mean, but there is an aesthetic that's this uncanny aesthetic with AI, and I'm surprised that we haven't seen it move into the real world. I did see, and I forget who it was, there was a fashion house that shot things to look like that uncanny AI, and I thought that was beautiful because, we're always influenced by what we see, and that's what beauty is, whatever is out there and popular, that's beauty. So I thought that was so interesting, but now it's been done, and it's probably the uncanny is going away too. At least on Midjourney, Stable Diffusion has this thing called One Girl, because all the women look the same. So you could probably get into that a little bit, but yeah, I feel that the time to play in the AI looking thing is probably over, although we'll probably see a ton of it next year from brands, because it's over.
It'll be curious to see where culture folds in on itself in that space. I think we're going to see a lot more of it, and we're going to see it evolve. Any other questions?
Oh, I just had one. As a creative, I love AI. I think that the possibilities are endless. I'm curious why we didn't spend time a little bit more talking about the carbon emissions and the footprint, because I think it's, when you look into AI compared to traditional search, it is staggering. And I think it's almost irresponsible as creators and as humans. We look at beauty and where beauty comes from, and it's the world around us. And I think we owe it to ourselves and each other to at least be mindful of the environmental impacts it has and it can have in the future when it becomes more ubiquitous. So I just think that's something that if you don't know the carbon emissions related to it, you should look into it, do your homework, and not saying you will tinker less, but maybe tinker more with intent. So just a thought.
Yeah, that is a very valid point, and I'm hopeful that as progress makes the models less GPU intensive, that we're going to see improvements in that area. And I think people are working hard in that space to try. But I think that's a very valid point that needs to be addressed.
I'll also mention I'm really deeply involved with sustainability and production with this company called Green the Bid, and I've really gone full circle, mentally, spiritually, on my sort of relationship with just a green practice, because it was during the pandemic. It was super dark for me. You're making decisions based on a future that you don't believe in, and therefore you're not, having kids because you don't want to bring them into it. It got really scary, and I realized that I had to start making choices that I knew I could impact. Composting was my gateway drug, but I get to a point where I'm like, okay, is washing the dishes and the water waste worse than throwing it away? What is worse, the physical waste or the digital waste or the energy waste? And we're moving the waste from one space to another. So there's less physical waste. People that were painters forever pouring paint down the drain, and that was, so I get to this point where I don't want to hinder creativity and evolution, but my hope is that the systems in place aren't set up for us right now, and that my hope is that we can we're working towards building a future where there is hopefully like solar, water, wind that can power these things, because then we'll get to this like up level where there is no physical waste and perhaps we can actually run on these things. And we're not there yet, and now we're just moving energy waste from one thing to another, which is really frustrating. But for me, also with the virtual production LED volume conversation, I no longer have to like have these huge set builds where we're just throwing these huge like pieces, like 5x8 like sets, and so that was always so hard for me. And I had this shoot where I was really pushing to be able to this green energy company to be able to have a fully green production too, because that was their whole MO. And I thought, can I just talk to the studio and see if there's a way that we can get some solar panels outside and power this whole thing, so then we can actually say that even though it's a virtual stage and we're doing a shoot for a green energy company, wouldn't it be so cool to say that this whole thing was powered by like solar? But I realized I'm one cog in this machine, and like that's their business. But I literally wanted to like interview them to say like, hey, like where are all the virtual production stages that are going to be running on solar? So I feel like I'm one voice pushing for it, but I don't want it to get in the way of, like, I was kind of completely analysis of paralysis. I was like, I was just so like depressed about it, and then I kind of came to be with this new relationship with it, which is like incremental change, not perfect, not nearly anything perfect, but anyway, but thank you, that's a really great point for sharing.
I think we have time for one more question. Yeah, so when 23andMe came about, everybody was concerned about that DNA information, where it's going to go, what's going to happen. Everybody did it, we don't know. The same question comes with here. You both told me you uploaded your photos. So a lot of people are questioning, okay, it's my likeness, and if your art is self-portrait, or there's some representation of yourself, would that be part of the algorithm, and that will be somebody else's art, where I don't have control of my own face? You know what I mean? Question about that.
Yeah, I mean, for the example that I did, it was, I use Midjourney in a stealth mode, and then I ended up doing a face swap, which did put my face in there, but then I think that Midjourney trains on its own outputs, and in fact, Adobe trains on Midjourney outputs, so the ethical algorithm is actually training on what people would consider to be not a clean algorithm. But already, anything that anyone has uploaded to Instagram, Facebook, etc., that's out there. Those contests people do where they have like a young photo and then an older photo, that's feeding the algorithms. I mean, that's why they're asking for those uploads, so.
Yeah, I will say though that I don't think putting like images of us like into Midjourney or whatever will change, will like take our likeness, because you're not connecting it to the name, right? And the way to get things is by using a name. So I use David Harbour from Stranger Things as an example. Like, you can make, because he's been acting for a while, but he's kind of really only been famous for Stranger Things, which is like 5 years, and it's a certain look. You know, it's just whatever age he is look. So if you put him into there, it will look spot on like him. If you put Ron Howard and you don't put an age there, I mean, you'll get it to look like him, but it needs to pick, like, am I choosing Opie, or am I choosing, bald dude with the cap, right?
Yeah.
And so it needs to make those choices, and it doesn't know. If I put Kenny Friedman, it's not gonna know, because it's probably gonna take, like, what is the average Kenny look like? What does the average Friedman look like? But none of us are, I mean, maybe some people are famous enough, but none of us are famous enough to like be pulled out. So I don't worry about it. I also have no photos of me online, so there's that.
Yeah, I guess I'm actually more concerned about like others like monetizing on like creating custom model of like my work. Like, I'm more concerned about my work than like fine, like use my likeness, because that's not really something that I feel is sold, and like I just, what are they going to do with my identity? I mean, obviously my identity's already been stolen a million times, so like we live in this world of like digital identity theft, so you just have to be really careful, but I'm just more concerned about like my intellectual IP, actually. So I think that's kind of where my most concerns are, but yeah.
Yeah, and that's something that actually gets at me is, again, that describe feature, which I love because it helped me find like the words for my art, which I then put in. It could also have me like find the words for yours, and then I can echo it. And I think there's a danger there, but also my gut is a true artist, and I think that we could see the difference between a true artist and just somebody popping things into AI. A true artist hopefully wouldn't do that, hopefully.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you all.
Guys
Thanks
for hanging out.
Thanks everybody
Thank you for the great
your
questions.
participation, your full participation, and for hanging with us.